Alright, hey guys. Today I decided to empty my freezer a little bit, starting to get a little full. So I had a bunch of tomatoes that I had thrown in the freezer from last season in spring. I got some green tomatoes, some red tomatoes that I just kind of threw in a bag because I ran out of time. And now I have the time to do it, and I also have some bagged up tomato sauce that I didn't can. I must have ran out of steam. Instead of canning it, I just threw it in the freezer. But I'd like to go ahead and get this out of the freezer and into jars on the shelf so I can use the freezer for other things like chicken, meat, and beef and pork. So what I'm going to do is put all of that into this big roaster pan and just let it go all night. And I'll just throw some seasoning, some of my basil that I grew, and maybe some parsley that I'm growing right now, and let that cook. And then I'll blend it up and can it tomorrow or the next day after that. We'll see what it tastes like and how it does. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put all of that in here. First, I think I'm going to spray it just a little bit. You're not supposed to add any oil to your tomatoes when you can it, but I think it'll be okay if I just spray this pan, because it will make a big mess if you don't. It'll stick all up here on your edges, and it'll do it a little bit anyways, but it won't be quite as bad. So for right now, I'm going to go ahead and just put in these whole tomatoes. They'll cook down pretty easily, and I know there's like cores in here and still stuff, but it'll be okay because it's gonna cook for a long time, low and slow. The rest of the afternoon, it's just 2:30 right now, so I'll let it cook all afternoon and all night, and probably part of the morning tomorrow before I can this up. So I'm gonna let these tomato sauces thaw a little bit because I don't think I'd be able to get them out of the bags. So I'm gonna let those thaw in my sink for a little while before I add them. But I can just go ahead and add all these different tomatoes. So this won't be quite as a red soup. So these are all of the green tomatoes that I grabbed when my plants died and they didn't have enough time to start to change. But some of them are kind of changed. And I already have a ton of salsa verdes. So I'm just going to make this all go together to be just a basic tomato sauce. And then I can doctor it up into, pizza sauce or whatever. But these black cherry tomatoes that I grew last year, they were so prolific and they grow like crazy so easily. But when we start to get a lot of rain, they start to split. So you got to get them before they split. All right, so the rest of what I have is tomato sauce. So I'm going to go ahead and let those finish defrosting, and I'll add to it. So this will make a nice full pot here. It's already 3/4 full, so that'll make quite a bit of sauce for us and give me some space in my freezer to work with so I can actually see what's going on in there. And then after this, the next couple days, we're going to do some bone broth, and that will further empty the freezer a little bit. I have 2 stand-up freezers, and eventually I'll show you those. But they're so slam-packed right now, and we got the next garden season coming in, so time to go ahead and get some of this out and onto the shelf. All right, so I'll bring you back when tomorrow when it's done cooking down and show you what it looks like, and then we'll can it together. I forgot to tell you guys what temperature to do it on. So what I'm going to start it out on is at 200, just until they start to release some of their juices. And then I'll turn it up to 250, and that is like your slow cook and your slow cooker. So I'll leave it on 250 until it's done. But I am going to add a little bit of water just to help it out a little bit so it doesn't burn on the bottom. And then I'll come through and I'll stir these every 20 minutes or so and see how they're doing. All right. All right, guys, it's the next day. What I did was I cooked all of these down, and as they started defrosting, they released a lot of just regular water. So what I did was scoop that out. And then as it started breaking down the tomatoes a little bit, it got pretty juicy. So what I did was I just used like a ladle and scooped out the juice. And this will probably be about 1 quart size jar here. So I put this aside in the refrigerator overnight. And then once these started mushing up, the frozen tomatoes, I added in all of the frozen sauce that I had. So this is a mixture of all of the frozen sauce and the frozen tomatoes that I had. So now what I'm going to do, I turned this off this morning, and it just let it kind of cool off just a little bit. So when I blend it, it won't, make a bunch of steam and explode my blender. So my sister is letting me store her Vitamix, which, let me tell you, if you can afford this blender, it is as amazing as everybody says it is. And if she ever wants this back, I will definitely 100% buy my own. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ladle this sauce into my blender. I'm going to blend it, and then I'm going to put it into this pot here. And then, because I'm going to can this, tomato sauce needs to be pressure canned, because it can be low in acid. Even though you would think tomatoes have a high acid content, each tomato is different. So tomatoes must be pressure canned. So I'm going to put it in this pot and bring it to a boil, and then I'll jar it up and pressure can it. This is what I use, my recipe. Turn the light on. And this is the Ball Complete Book of Home Preserving. These are all safe and tested recipes. Always, always use a safe and tested recipe. Don't go on Pinterest and search up canning recipes, because most times they will not be safe and tested. So this is the basic tomato sauce that I'm going to be doing. It kind of gives you all the different instructions and how long to pressure can it for either a pint or a quart size. And tomato juice is the same, so I can just do the tomato juice in right with this tomato sauce, which it has that on the previous page there, the tomato juice. So I'm going to be following this recipe. Even though I have done this many times, I still get my book out every time just to double check, make sure this is safe and it will not make my family sick. Okay, so it's super important to follow a tested recipe. All right, so I'm going to get my ladle, and I'm going to start ladling that into my blender, and then I'll go ahead and blend that up. And it's going to be all mixed together in the pot, so it doesn't matter if I get chunks or sauce or whatever. I'll do it all eventually. And it should fit in that pot pretty well. Overfill it too much. And this blender will get all of the seeds and everything. It'll just blend it all up to obliteration. I don't know if you'll be able to see it or not, but we'll see. I really like this blender, how it has those different speeds. You can start it out nice and slow, get everything starting, and then you can really turn it up high. So there are no seeds in this. You can't even tell. And of course, you know that I put whole tomatoes in there, so it had their cores and the skins and everything. There's so many vitamins and nutrients in the skin. Unless you have an issue digesting the skins, leave them in. Leave the seeds in. There's so many great things in there. If it doesn't bother your stomach. I know some people are sensitive to it. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and finish blending this up, and I'll bring it back when I'm ready to fill up my jars. All right, I went ahead and cleaned my mess up over on the other side with the blender and the roaster pan. I got out my pressure canner. This is just a Presto pressure canner, and it holds up to 7 quarts or 9 pints. And I put my 3 quarts of water. Each pressure canner is different. Just read your manual. It'll tell you how much to add. This came to a boil, and I turned off the burner real quick. And now I have the tomato juice, which is boiling. I washed all of my jars in hot soapy water and all of the bands that go with it, and my brand new lids. You always want to check your lids, because sometimes even brand new ones, they'll be dented around the outside sometimes or pushed in. You don't want to use those. Okay, and then these are wide mouth quart jars. This is what I like to use because when you wash them, you can stick your hand all the way in. You want to make sure there's no nicks in the rim of your jar, because if there is, it could make the seal not work properly. Okay, this is citric acid. Because tomatoes are a low acid food, we have to add citric acid to make it safe. You could do lemon juice if you prefer. I just buy this in bulk because I did a lot of canning tomatoes and sauce last year. So I just bought a big bag of it. It's not very expensive on Amazon. So for quart size, you add half a teaspoon of the citric acid, just right in the bottom. Or lemon juice, if you were doing it, it would be a tablespoon for a pint or 2 tablespoons for a quart size jar. Okay, so we want to fill this with up to 1 inch headspace. I do have a ruler, but basically 1 inch is right here down at the bottom of this rim. Like you can kind of see where the lips are. This is about 1 inch. So I just fill it to there. So I have a canning funnel. I want to make sure this is nice and hot. My jars are still warm. I found if I have my jars too hot, I had one break last time because it was too hot. So I'll probably just go ahead and ladle some of this in at first. And this is the tomato juice. You can use this in soups and chilies. You can just drink it if you like. Make a savory smoothie if you want. I think I can just pour it in from here. And that's just about perfect. I might add just a teeny bit of hot water just to get it to that 1 inch headspace. I don't mind if it's watered down just a tiny bit. All right. All right, so you want to get a little paper towel. I did put aside some of the tomato sauce because I'm going to sorry, I had to go get the vinegar real quick. I forgot. So what I like to do is just get a little bit of white vinegar on a little paper towel, and you want to make sure you clean off this rim. And this, I usually use a chopstick, and I couldn't find it. You just want to make sure there's no air bubbles. Well, the liquid is not a big of a deal, but you just want to clean off the rim of your jar there. Make sure there's no citric acid or anything that could make your seal of your lid not work right. You put your lid here. And then your ring goes on finger tight. Don't put it on too tight or it'll make your lid buckle. Okay, I already have my pressure canner on low, warming up. So I'm just going to stick this right in here and it can sit there while I finish the rest of the jars. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and bring over the tomato sauce. And we'll start putting that in jars. I have to move my camera. I think I blocked you there. Okay, so I'm just going to do one at a time. So half a teaspoon of citric acid in the bottom of the jar. I did put aside some of this sauce because I'm going to make like a tomato and rice soup for dinner tonight. So that will save me one more lid to not use. So we'll see how many jars I get filled. I went ahead and got 7 jars out because that is a full canner load for my canner. And if I don't fill them all, maybe I just might fill one up with water just to take up the space. But I think I'll at least have 6 here. So there is 4 cups in each quart. So if you're using it for a recipe and you want to know. All right, so that's just about 1 inch headspace there. I don't even know if you could see any of that. So I'm just going to take my stick. I usually use a chopstick. It works perfectly. And then I'm going to clean off the rim. Put on my lid and my ring fingertip tight. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put the rest of these, fill the rest of these up and get them in my canner. All right, so that made enough to make 6 jars total. I think they'll be okay since we're pressure canning. They won't knock over here. They're pretty good next to each other. Usually if I water bath and I have an extra space, I try to fill it with something, even just an empty can, because they will kind of fall over. But these should be fine being pressure canned because they're only in a little bit of water. I have my burner on low so that I wouldn't be putting a hot jar into a cold pot of water. So what I'll do now is go ahead and put the lids on my pressure canner with the weight off. So you just want to line up your arrows and then twist it closed. Make sure you're centered over your burner. I like to adjust it because I always set up my bar while I watch this so I can look at my pressure gauge right here. So usually there's one of these things that you would put on it, but you don't want to do that yet because what you need to do is let it build up pressure. So I'm just going to knock up the heat just a little bit, not quite to high, but almost. And what it's going to do is it's going to start venting out of this little valve right here. And then this here will pop up. And then it will release steam. And you want to let it do that for 10 minutes. Set a timer. Once it's done venting for 10 minutes, then you put this on and then it will start getting pressure inside. So I am at sea level, so I'm going to pressure can at 10 pounds of pressure. So once it gets to the 10, I can turn my burner down and regulate it there. And then for tomato sauce, let's go look at our recipe book real quick, just to double check. Always double check. We're doing quarts for 15 minutes. So I'll set the timer for 15 minutes and it will pressure can for 15 minutes. I'll bring you back to let you know what it looks like with the steam. All right, so this has been steaming for 10 minutes, venting. You can maybe barely see it venting. I can see it though. So it's been venting for 10 minutes and this has popped up. So what I'm going to do now is put my weight over there. And now we're going to watch as this goes all the way up to 10. And then I will turn down my heat. Careful touching that, that's hot too. Then I'll turn down my heat once it gets up to the appropriate pressure, excuse me. And then I'll set, once it gets to 10, then I'll set my timer for 15 minutes. Okay, so my 15-minute timer is over. Do not do anything to it. I gently, very carefully and slowly slide it off of the hot burner just so it'll cool down a little quicker. But if you're not in a hurry, definitely just leave it exactly where it is, especially if you're water bath canning and you have a big heavy pot and it will tip over and not be fun, I promise. So now we're just going to let this naturally come down from pressure. Do not take this off, okay? You just have to wait for this to come all the way down to 0 pressure. Then wait a little bit longer. Then you can take off this, okay? And then you wait longer. And then you can crack your lid. Just open it and prop it up on top of it and then wait some more. Otherwise, if it cools off too fast, too quickly, such a change in temperature, you will lose half of your stuff. It will all siphon out, which means the inside of it will pour over the outside, and a lot of the time it messes up the seal of your jars. So when you're canning, you cannot be in a hurry. Just take your time. Now I'm going to go outside and do some chores while this comes down to pressure. And then I'll bring you back when it's time to take them out. All right, guys, so I let the pressure come all the way down, removed the, whatever this thing is called, the pressure weight, and let it sit for a little while longer. Then I cracked, just like undid the lid and set it right on top, and then left it for a little while. So now they're ready to come out. So here we go. I'm going to set you over here so I can use my hands. It always makes me nervous walking across, so I like to kind of rest it on a pot holder. You just want to put about 1 inch in between each jar just so they can finish cooling. And it's normal for it to lose a little bit of headspace like that. Looks like it's lost a little bit of the sauce. That's pretty normal. And here's the juice. All right, one more. All right, so now it's really important at this stage to not do anything with them. Just let them sit on your counter. Don't touch them. Don't press on them to see if they sealed. Sometimes you get to hear a little ping, and it's the most wonderful sound in the world knowing that your food is safe to put on your shelf. So I'm going to let these sit here overnight, and tomorrow around lunchtime, which is about 24 hours, I will take the rings off and wash them, and then I'll label what they are and what day I process them. So I'll just write tomato sauce and then tomorrow's date. And you want to store them with the rings off. But you always want to make sure you wipe them all the way down. And sometimes if you do something sticky like jam or apple butter or something, sometimes some of it does come out on the sides, just a little bit of siphoning. So you just want to make sure you get all that food off. And then just store them one level. So you don't want to stack this jar on top of this jar. But sometimes you can put like a little bit of cardboard or maybe the box that the jars came in. So I hope you guys learned something from this. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. And I would love if you would subscribe and share this with all of your friends and family and neighbors. I'd like to reach as many people as I possibly can, and I hope you learned something. We'll see you next time.